it's hard. It's not bad that the shoe companies want to put money into athletes and want to develop athletes, but without any outside voices or check-ins, it can lead to these situations where the athletes have no power, where the athletes have to start making decisions that aren't good for them. Like, I'm going to train harder than I am, or I'm going to fall into depression, just show up every day. That's not going to work either. It's just not.
Every time you get on the mic, you get so many tweets and people saying put her on every single broadcast, because it's such a coherent explanation of what's happening in the event. Why is it important? Why does it matter? And then there's just that passion around it too, which I think there's so many announcers that are smart, but don't have the passion to match the chops. But talk to me about the broadcast process, right? The reason I ask is I think broadcasting in trail running is one of the best ways to bring more people into the sport. There's a lot that Dylan Bowman and Jamil Curry via Mountain Outpost and all of these platforms where it's a plug and play of, hey, we have what Billy Yang does with Western States. There are hundreds of thousands of people watching those broadcasts, and with track, probably more. There's definitely more. So talking about who are you speaking to when you are doing the broadcast? And maybe in that you can answer a little bit more around so many of the local broadcasts clearly are not intended for actual running fans. Is that intentional? Are they going super broad, or is it intended to be for the fans? How do you think about who you're speaking with?
I think about it this way. Which NBC doesn't have the rights to the Diamond League anymore. We had it. And so I called Diamond League the last few years, but this year we don't. But when I'm calling Diamond League, I'm calling it for the hardcore fan. Someone's not going to stumble across it on Peacock probably and be like, oh my gosh, Zurich, I should watch this. Maybe someone does, but most people are like, Zurich is on tomorrow. I have to watch it, because they're hardcore track fans. So when I'm broadcasting for something like that, I'm leaning way more into splits because they know what it means. I'm leaning way more into national records and the times they're chasing and what do they because they get all of that detail. They understand what a split is. They understand what a 60-second quarter is versus a 56-second. They know that. But when I'm broadcasting on NBC on a Sunday, the US champs, the Olympics, now I'm trying to invite new people in. I might yell, they just split a 56, but now I'm going to contextualize, what does that mean? They just split a 56. Typically they come through in 58. That's extremely fat, but I really try to stay away from splits a little bit when I'm broadcasting. I don't want someone to change the channel and they hear all these numbers that make no sense to them and they're like, meh, I'm over it. I'm going to keep flipping. I want them to stay. That was one of my biggest challenges during the Olympics was, the men's 1500 fell on a night where there weren't a lot of finals. And my bosses at NBC kept saying, you got to sell this thing every time you come on air so that we still have great ratings that night. And so it's through all the rounds, how do I rope people in? How do I tell these people's stories? So they're like, what do you mean Jakob Ingebrigtsen is the fastest in the race, yet he never wins the championship, which isn't true because he is the Olympic champion from Tokyo. But, these are the stories that we're telling. What do you mean he's the fastest by far, but yet he's probably not going to win? What are you talking about? And I'm explaining why that happens, why it works. And so when I'm broadcasting really big events, I'm trying to meet the middle, and I'm going to get complaints on either side, but I'm trying to meet the middle of someone who just happened to turn on the TV and try to get them to not change it. And then the person who's been looking forward to this Olympic final for 3 years, right? I'm trying to meet it in the middle. A lot of the times the people have been waiting for 3 years. Let me know I dumbed it down too much. But the ratings show I didn't, because the ratings show that people stayed and people tuned in who are not hardcore track fans.
The loud minority.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
What about road marathons? How do you think about broadcasting a road marathon?
A road marathon is so different because you just have all this time, right? I work for the World Feed now, so I don't work network marathoning anymore because ESPN owns most of them, and I don't work for ESPN, but I work for World Feed, so I call New York and Boston for the World Feed, and it's a 4-hour broadcast, no commercial breaks, no packages. You really can tell the story, and you can really dive into the players. And as the race starts to separate, you can really go deep on people. Honestly, when the first time I called the marathon for the World Championships, my producer said, think of it like a podcast. And it was really great advice because you're just there with the audience for so long and you're building. You want to lay the bricks of this is what we're looking forward to, but you can get into it so much more. Marathons are much calmer. I mean, think about a men's 1500, you have 3.5 minutes. What are you going to say in 3.5 minutes? And you're working with someone. So you really have 1 minute because you have to let it breathe at times in the race. So you have 1 minute and 20 seconds that you're actually going to be talking. Where in a marathon, you have 4 hours, you're going to be talking for an hour and a half on your end. So it breathes more. And then, you want it to build, obviously. And the marathons have been so exciting lately where it comes down to 3 or 4 people and they're all together with 5 miles to go. And then you're kind of telling everybody who has what strength. You're kind of trying to guess like who might go, let the audience in a little bit. And that's how I think about marathons.
I think I'll be hunted with pitchforks if I don't ask this question.
Okay.
Why can't the broadcast nail the split screen between men and women?
I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I will just say that the World Feed in Boston, we crushed the split screen. I don't know why it's such a challenge. There have been times where things happened where I didn't feel like I was high enough up the chain yet to say something. But for instance, at World Champs, when they were in Eugene, my producer cut the women's 10,000 with 3 laps to go. And that whole night I was so flustered and so angry, and I built up the courage to go talk to him the next morning. And he was like, actually, I need to talk to you. And he apologized. But I think it does fall on you a little bit. Like some of the broadcasts that I've rewatched back, it does fall a little bit on that team to say, this is unacceptable. We cannot keep doing this. And you have a run of show, but I don't know why it's so hard to switch to the women's race. Like it's not that hard. And I think sometimes some of like old school is like, well, the women will have the last 20 minutes of the broadcast, but then we've even seen that they're interviewing men while the women are finishing, right? So I don't know why it's so hard, but I will tell you that when I'm calling it, I am vocal. I feel comfortable enough in my skin now to make sure that if we watch this back, nobody better say the men got 8 more minutes than the women, or I will take it upon, I will take that as a huge ass criticism.
Makes sense. Thank you for that. Okay, switching gears, you had mentioned Colleen's team and listening to how she explained that structure of Meridia. I'm assuming you've read a bunch of the stuff and maybe listened to the podcast.
Yeah. What was so great about listening to the podcast was that, I don't know if you're going this way, but when I read it, I couldn't really put my finger on what is it. And then when she explained it, it was so good. And I was just like, oh, Colleen, you should be you should be talking more. She did such a good job of describing what the challenges were and how she was meeting those challenges that she has found. After listening to her, I was like, oh, I get it. I'm behind it. Yeah. And it wasn't that I wasn't behind it before. I just didn't quite get it. She did a great job explaining it.
Yes. And she is such a bubbly personality, both in person and in front of a microphone, that's her strength, or the way she does it on Instagram too is fantastic versus the written word where you're at the mercy of whoever's writing the article.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's like really hard to pull out that lightning personality of hers through the written word. So talk to me about how you received the news of a structured team like that, knowing that like you guys were on the same team that she was referencing. I assume that you've experienced similar challenges in the same coaches and the same structure and the same incentives and the same shoe brand and all of this. Like, I'm super curious to hear your take on this. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we both ran for Bowerman, but not at the same time. So we didn't actually overlap, but we ran under the same structure of the same team with the same coaches. I thought it was really kind of brave of her to say some of the things that she said, because it's stuff that's true, but we're all just kind of like, well, that's the way it is, and she was just kind of like, this is crazy. Like, that comes from the top down. I'm just a number. And she's right. She's right. I think the way that she's right. The way that most of the teams are structured is that whoever is running well is going to get the focus, and you're replaceable. And they're not really, even she said they invented Bowerman Babes, which is like a whole thing, right? But she doesn't actually own Bowerman Babes, even though they came up with it. So,
and they are them. They not are them. Like a Nike thing. It's like the people.
Right. Totally. Go back and look at me when I started marathoning and all the skulls and crossbones that I put on my nails and my water bottles and my shoes, and then go back and look what the Oregon Project logo was, right? Like whatever. But anyway, I thought it was really cool that she was like saying what the flaws are. And it doesn't mean that her coach isn't a good coach. It just meant that that situation wasn't good for her, but there are no alternatives. Like, what's the alternative? I mean, there are groups like Emma Coburn and her husband, Joe Bosshart, have had a lot of success with women running really well. And so there are little groups here and there, but part of the reason they're able to stay afloat is because Emma's doing well and Joe's her husband, and he's not like needing this compensation.
Pay me more,
what I mean?
Emma.
Yeah. Like he's doing, you know what I mean? He doesn't need to take all this money. Yeah. And so I think they've done a really great job of like having athletes from all sorts of different sponsorships and different events. But those are very few and far between. The majority of them are Nike Run or On Run or Adidas Run. And if you get injured, you're super replaceable. She was talking, I can't remember, she was saying something about how she like got reduced 70-some%. How are you supposed to feel good about going to practice when it's like, I kill myself here every day, and yet I just got cut by 70%.
Well, the craziest thing that I heard her talking about on the Second Nature podcast was many of her teammates were not getting paid anything, but Bowerman was the best team to be on. So they were taking gear sponsorships so that they could be on the team. That
Yeah,
blew my
I know that
fucking
that's
mind.
true. It's true. One of the biggest names was on a gear sponsorship. And that's what she's trying to address. That's not right. You know what I mean? I think it's great when the shoe companies invest. Don't get me wrong. I think it's awesome. But I think it also puts you in a tough position because you can't then disagree and say like, actually, this environment doesn't work for me. Or I actually have a problem. You know, when I was at the Nike Oregon Project, who am I going to go and tell that Alberto is abusive? There's a fucking building on the Nike
go to
campus.
HR at Nike.
Yeah. Bye. Right. So I think
we
that's
have a problem here. Bye, Kara.
Yeah, see, I'm replaceable. He's not, right? They're going to protect him at all costs until he couldn't be protected anymore. But I'm replaceable and he has a building on campus. So I think those are the situations where it can be, it's hard. It's hard. It's not bad that the shoe companies want to put money into athletes and want to develop athletes, but without any like outside voices or check-ins, it can lead to these situations where the athletes have no power, where the athletes have to start making decisions that aren't good for them. Like, I'm going to train harder than I am, or I'm going to fall into depression, just show up every day. You know, like that's not going to work either. It's just not.